In recent months, within the personal gadgets industry, the same cautious but persistent whisper has been heard more and more often. Apple is once again preparing not just an update to the iPhone, but a fundamental shift in the very understanding of what a modern smartphone should be. According to sources close to the company's engineering teams, work has long been underway inside Cupertino on a project that is referred to in internal documents as the most radical iPhone redesign since the abandonment of the home button. Formally, the device will look familiar, recognizable edges, signature aesthetics, minimalism. But the entire revolution is hidden in one parameter that Apple intends to turn into a weapon of mass destruction for competitors: thickness. Insiders claim that the company has set itself an ambitious and at first glance almost insane goal to create the thinnest smartphone in the world, officially securing this status at the industry level. This is not about a cosmetic reduction by fractions of a millimeter, but about a radical decrease in thickness to values at which the device will visually and tactilely feel almost like a flat sheet of glass, rather than a conventional phone. And what matters is that this is not an abstract idea for the distant future, but an active engineering project that Apple is already working on now. An indirect confirmation of this was the thin iPhone Air, which has recently been increasingly mentioned by publications such as Bloomberg, The Information, and Nikkei Asia. According to these sources, iPhone Air has become a kind of testing ground, the first step toward a new design philosophy. The device features a significantly reduced thickness compared to standard models, a lightweight construction, a redesigned battery module, a new approach to component placement, and even compromises in the cameras that Apple deliberately accepted in order to test the limits of what is possible. Internal reports cited by insiders indicate that it is on iPhone Air that engineers are refining technologies for ultra-thin batteries, next-generation multi-layer boards, and a redesigned cooling system without traditional thermal gaps. In essence, Air is not just another model in the lineup, but an encrypted message to the market. Apple has already begun moving toward extremely thin devices and does not intend to stop. But what consumers see now is only the tip of the iceberg. The main work is being carried out behind closed doors, in laboratories accessible to only a few dozen engineers. Sources claim that a real engineering war is underway inside Apple for every micron of space. Reducing the thickness of a smartphone is not just making the case thinner, it is a chain reaction that affects absolutely everything: the battery, cameras, chips, antennas, speakers, haptic feedback, structural strength, resistance to bending, and even acoustics. One former Apple employee who spoke to journalists on condition of anonymity compared this process to trying to fit a full-scale supercomputer into the blade of a knife without losing either power or reliability. That is why the project is considered one of the most complex in the company's history. According to sources, the design team has already repeatedly entered into tough debates with engineers, since the visual concept requires extreme thinness, while engineers fear a repeat of the bend gate scenario from the iPhone 6 era. However, unlike the past, Apple now has completely different technologies at its disposal: a new titanium alloy, reinforced glass, composite rigidity layers, and a redesigned internal frame that distributes load across the entire surface of the device. Special attention is being paid to the battery. The battery has traditionally been the main limitation for smartphone thinness, and Apple, according to analysts, is betting on a fundamentally new type of battery cells with increased energy density. This is not about fantasy graphene batteries often mentioned in leaks, but about a more realistic yet no less revolutionary approach: multi-layer cells with minimal gaps and integration into the very structure of the body. Sources at Nikkei claim that Apple is experimenting with placing the battery not as a separate block, but as a structural element of the device, which makes it possible to save precious millimeters. The cameras are another painful issue. In the ultra-thin iPhone, Apple may, according to rumors, take a radical step and completely abandon the familiar protruding camera modules by integrating the sensors flush with the body. To achieve this, the company is testing new horizontally positioned periscope layouts as well as software-based compensation of losses through computational photography and AI algorithms. This is exactly where Apple, according to insiders, is counting on its main advantage: software. While competitors may be forced to sacrifice image quality for the sake of thinness, Apple will rely on neural networks that will pull the image up to a flagship level. Inside the company, this approach is called thinness without compromise. And if the leaks are to be believed, Tim Cook is personally overseeing this project, considering it key to the future of the iPhone. Apple understands that the smartphone market has long fallen into stagnation. Users are replacing devices less often, innovations feel cosmetic, and competitors are stuck in place. An ultra-thin iPhone may become the very emotional shock that once again makes millions of people say, "I want this device." That is why, according to Bloomberg, Apple is planning not a single release, but an entire lineup of ultra-thin iPhones that will become the company's new standard over the next several years. Sources claim that inside Cupertino, a scenario is already being discussed in which regular thick iPhones will gradually fade into the past, and the ultra-thin design will become the norm, just as the home button or the headphone jack once disappeared. For competitors, this may turn into a real nightmare. Reproducing such a technology is extremely difficult. It requires years of research, control over supply chains, proprietary chips, and deep integration of hardware and software. Analysts at Morgan Stanley state directly that if Apple is the first to bring to market a truly thin but powerful smartphone without serious compromises, Android manufacturers will once again find themselves in the role of followers, just as after the launch of the first iPhone. Within Samsung and Xiaomi, according to Korean and Chinese sources, every rumor coming out of Cupertino is being closely monitored as they understand that Apple's bet on thickness may trigger a new arms race in the industry. And if even part of these leaks proves true, then in the coming years, we may witness the moment when a smartphone stops being perceived as a device in the usual sense and turns into an almost weightless digital object. Thin, cold, perfectly flat. And then it will become clear that Apple has once again done what it does best: transformed an incredibly complex engineering challenge into a new market standard, leaving competitors struggling to understand how such a thing could even be replicated. That is why inside Apple, this project is already being seen not just as another redesign, but as a strategic move for years ahead. After all, Apple's history has repeatedly shown that the company prefers to take one risky step forward, forcing the entire industry to catch up, rather than cautiously moving with the general flow. And this is exactly why there is so much silence around the topic of the world's thinnest iPhone right now. Apple traditionally remains quiet when it is preparing to say something truly loud.